The fact is, in the world we live in, digital communication is very important. It keeps your circle close, allows you to deal with business, friendships, events, all kinds of communication, and being able to do it digitally saves a lot of time, adds a lot of value to your schedule, and allows you to continuously have conversations at your own convenience. But the problem is, a lot of these companies, these apps, these email services are not about privacy, and not just not about privacy, but they sell your data. We're gonna talk about the best private emails and the best private text message options in this video. So make sure you buckle up and get ready. Let's go all into Operation Digital Privacy. All right, so when it comes to email, the most popular option is ProtonMail. And I use ProtonMail. I think ProtonMail works really good. I also use toolkit every day, which is another really good quality company. Those are probably my two main go-to emails. Now, I did a full email breakdown and let you know why I have 5 emails, both for my 2 companies and for personal stuff and for, I don't want to say junk email, because basically junk email I send to dead accounts that I don't even check and haven't for years, and I'll switch them up from time to time. But having email is important. But also, what about text? Well, email is an outdated service that really wasn't meant to be private, and we didn't look at privacy the same way when the internet was originated, right? So when you look at the origins of the internet, privacy wasn't baked in. To have the internet we should have, the internet we deserve, we would really have to restructure a lot of it, like literally a complete overhaul, a complete rebuild. We'd have to take it down to the studs and redo it, or we just have to, redo it from the ground up. But it would need a lot of work to make it private. And there's a lot of people, the biggest people on the internet, it is in their best interest to never let that happen. They make trillions with a T based on you not having privacy. That's what makes the internet go round. So, that being the case, well, I shouldn't say go round, ads fund it, but the big back end money is these database, these data mining, etc. So, when you look at email, understand that everything you say has the potential to be public record. Now, sites like ProtonMail boast end-to-end encryption. And if it's ProtonMail to ProtonMail, you can have encryption. And they talk about how their encryption is so good that even if the federal government, even if the FBI or the CIA or somebody came to their door and said, we demand this person's emails, they couldn't give them to you. Whether or not that's true is debatable. Some people said that they're literally owned by the CIA. People say all kinds of things, right? People on the internet say the darndest things. But what I will tell you is understand that if you write something in an email, there's a good chance it could be public and it's probably going to be scraped and read. Now, does that mean it's read by a person? They're just groups of people just reading your emails all day? No, it's computer generated. It's in a database. Could it be pulled up if they wanted to? More often than not, yeah. Even these email services that boast privacy. Now, there's no concrete evidence against toolkit or ProtonMail, so basically at a certain point you have to take some people's word for it and compartmentalize like I talk about. But when it comes to text messaging, probably a better option. And what could you use? Well, a lot of people use Signal. Signal is really popular, and I personally use Signal for low-level stuff. However, Signal has fundamental flaws. You could also use things like Telegram or WhatsApp. I highly recommend you use neither of those. They're literally worthless. Facebook Messenger, literally anything owned by Facebook, one of the worst things on the internet. Don't use any of it. Mark Zuckerberg has a rapist mentality when it comes to taking from people. No matter what they say, he will find a way to get it in the terms of service, to get after your data, to get after your information, to get after your money, to do whatever he can to take all he can. Mark Zuckerberg is the scum of the earth. And so any company that he has any ownership in, I would recommend avoiding at all costs, at least as frequently as possible. That said, what could you use? Well, Signal, like I said, at a base level, what I use is Wicker. Wicker is a good one, Wire's a good one, and Voxer. So a lot of people don't understand that Voxer has great end-to-end encryption, and it's got more of that walkie-talkie feature. It's got the voice recording. Voxer is actually really cool, and I started using Voxer like back in 2012. Right, I've been using it for a long time. I think it was founded in the early 2000, like maybe 2005 to 2008, somewhere in that range. Voxer was put together. Really cool company. Is it the most encrypted out there? I mean, at a certain point, again, the best security is an in-person conversation in a Faraday cage style safe room. That's the best option. And sweeping each person to make sure they're not wired. I mean, at a certain point, you have to compare what you're doing or saying versus the security risk. But it's nice to have a base level of privacy, right? So Voxer, WickerWire, and Signal to a certain degree is good. toolkit and ProtonMail are both good. And this is kind of some of my core fundamental platforms that I use, right? And I compartmentalize these platforms. You can go to privacyxproject.com and I break down all of the tools that I personally use. If it's on Privacy X Project, I use it personally. Most of them I'm not even affiliated with, to be honest with you. I'm just a happy customer. But everything on Privacy X Project is not things that you could use or you should use or might be good. They are all only things that I personally use. A lot of them I've done videos on this channel, how I use them, how to set them up. And if I haven't, make sure you subscribe, because that means there's a video down the line that we're working on or that will be coming out soon. Putting out a lot of content here. So subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you give this video a thumbs up so we can keep putting out videos so you guys can learn this, because privacy is right and it's right that needs to be protected, and nobody's going to protect your privacy for you. You got to do it for yourself. You got to stand up and protect your privacy. And these are some apps that can help keep your data and your information encrypted. Unfortunately, we're living in a world where things can be used against you. You take someone like Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan has talked for, I couldn't even fathom a guess of how many hours of in-depth communications Joe Rogan has online. Could you imagine his podcasts, his UFC commentary, his stand-up comedy? Like, the amount of voice that Joe Rogan has out there in the world is endless hours. There are software programs that could piece together and make it sound exactly like you. Even computers have gotten so good that other computers can't tell it's edited. That's how scary this stuff is getting, and it makes it seem like you said something. Now, Joe Rogan is actually in a good spot, because it's real easy for Joe to have plausible deniability, because he has so much out there and he's a celebrity and he's a target that he can say, I never said that, somebody's putting this together. That actually works really, really good in Joe Rogan's favor. But if you're the average person where there's, maybe you got a little bit on social media, maybe you did a couple videos here and there, but there's really not a lot about you on the internet, that's a problem, because if something does come up, people are going to be more likely to believe it, because where did this come from? You're not Joe Rogan with 1 billion hours of content, or one of these other celebrities with endless movies and shows and podcasts and videos and content, radio show, etc. So for the average person, this is actually really, really scary, because they can get some information on you and make it sound like you said things you never said. This is why keeping your communications private is important, and this is why keeping some of this stuff private is really important, especially when it comes to voice. Voice is the easiest tool to weaponize against somebody, especially nowadays. And so you want to keep that in mind when you're looking at what services you're going to use. Also, using different services for different people and different things. Don't put all your information in any. That's why I use multiple emails, right? Even if I only had one business and one personal email, I still would have 3 or 4, right? I'd still have a couple. I would double them up. Why? Because you don't want to have all your stuff in one area. Because as much as I think ProtonMail is probably all right, and toolkit is probably all right, and Signal, there's some issues with Signal, but they're better than. Don't ever use SMS text. If you got an iPhone or you've got an Android phone, don't use the text app. Understand that literally can be picked up by just about anybody. Like, that's the dumbest thing you could do, is actually use SMS text. That is one of the least secure forms of communication there is. Phone, similar thing. We've talked about what you should do with your phone number. So using pseudo or using Signal are great options, and it's something you should do, and it's something you should look into. But these are kind of the tools I use, and I wanted to give kind of a base level, because I go really deep into this. So I get a lot of people like, Cody, it's cool that you could do all this, but I'm just starting out and this is overwhelming. I get it, because it's a lifestyle, right? For me, people are like, Cody, you're crazy. Like, you have all these computers and phones and you do all this stuff when you travel. Guys, this is how I live. So for me, it's normal. For me to open up my safe and grab a different phone, or to grab, a different this or that. Maybe I've watched one too many Jason Bourne movies, but also it's normal, right? It's just normal for me. It's how I live. It's how I do things. But I've been doing this for over a decade. I talk about that in the Privacy X podcast of why I went down this journey, because of having my identity stolen and literally losing almost everything a long time ago. And so I started to change my lifestyle. But if you're just getting started, you're like, hey, I want a little more privacy. I'm seeing all this stuff on the news. I'm seeing this stuff happen. I'm seeing everyone get their identity stolen. I'm seeing people get stalked. I'm seeing people get doxxed. All things I've talked about here on the channel. I want some more privacy. I want to really protect myself and my family from these crazy people out there and from these companies and programs and governments and all this stuff. What are some simple steps? Well, the simplest is get rid of SMS text and switch over to Signal. Very easy. Get rid of Gmail, or, I mean, could you imagine, do you use Yahoo? Could you imagine if you use Yahoo? Like, get rid of all these pointless, don't use your carrier, don't use AT&T or Verizon Mail. Garbage, all of it, get rid of it today. Gmail is a good dummy email, but don't have it on your phone. You could check it from a wired connection on a VPN, it's fine. Again, most of you aren't being tracked or anything, so if you check Gmail from a wired connection, it's not a big deal. Just don't have it on your phone because they do have a lot of tracking. I mean, they have endless tracking on there. And just also, it's not about tracking. A lot of people, when I say tracking, people are like, Cody, you're crazy. It's not like people are following you around. That's not, I mean, well, actually, that's happened, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is they're building a database about you, where you go, what you do, what you think. Cody, how do they know what I think? Literally, your Google searches, your internet searches build a profile. I guarantee if you saw your profile, you would be like, it knows more about you than you probably know about yourself at any given moment. It is ridiculous. So you really need to break up the system, break up the monotony. Get Signal, and then get something like Voxer, get something like ProtonMail, or TootNota, both if you can afford it. They're not very expensive. We're talking a very small amount per year, a couple of bucks a month. Get a VPN. So if you get Signal, eitherwise ProtonMail or TootNota, and a VPN, something like ProtonMail, but don't get ProtonMail and Proton VPN. Don't put too much in one company. Get private internet access, ProtonMail, Signal. You've already started. That's it. You're already off to the races. Now, that's a very small, basic beginner, but that's a starting point. Be proud of yourself. You're doing more than 98% of people. And people are out there with Gmail and text messages and phones that track everything you do, and they don't even change the privacy settings, GPS, and find everything. And every moment you move around, you're geotagged, and it's all going into a database. So if you've done those three things, you're doing more than most people. And then you can start down the rabbit hole in my videos, and there's other great content creators on YouTube that talk about things you can do to live a more privacy-based life. It doesn't have to be tinfoil hat. It could be a lifestyle. And it's no different than preparedness, like having, people who are preppers. There are people who go off the rails. They're living in underground bunkers for no reason. But then there's also people who are like, hey, what if I have a little bit of storable food? What if I have, some candles? Or what if I have a generator, right? That's who I am. I'm the guy with some extra food and a generator and some extra lighting and solar. I've got solar products, right? So I'm the guy who's thinking about, well, if something happens, I've got some stuff stored up. I'm not the guy living in a hole. I want to live my life. I just want to live a good lifestyle in the process. And I also want to make sure that I can keep things above board, right? That's who I appeal to. And your privacy's been taken from you on a daily basis. I'm not about the tinfoil hats, everything's a conspiracy, live underground. That's ridiculous. Don't throw your life away because you're afraid of something that's never happened. We've got people who've been saying the end of the world is coming since the world started. And eventually they'll be right, but it's taken them thousands and endless years to get there. So live your life, but live it in a way where it's on your terms and not these big corporations' terms. Appreciate you checking out this video. Make sure you go all in everything you do, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.